Employers and managers who had to fire someone on their first day. What happened? I got to fire my co-manager's sister, who called 5 minutes before her first shift and said she'd be there in an hour, because she just sat down to dinner with friends. What do you mean you just sat down for dinner? Your first shift is in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I know. But we were out and decided to go for dinner. I'll still be there, just a little late.
An hour isn't a little late. Be here in 5 minutes or don't bother coming in at all.
But the co-manager is my sister, she gave me the job.
Yes, she did. See you in 5, or not at all.
But the co-manager is my sister.
I worked at a company once where a guy got fired for coming in late. It wasn't his first day, but still only about his third. His excuse?
I left the house at 8, I don't see what the problem is.
The manager told him.
We need people that can be here at 8, not leave the house at 8, don't bother coming in tomorrow.
My chef hired a guy who was less than a week out of prison for dealing. He was just going to wash dishes, seemed like an okay guy, just looking for some work, because he had just done 5+ years. So, day 1, he goes to head chef and asks,
"Hey man, you know anybody here who wants to buy heroin?"
Out the door 2 hours into his first job out of the joint.
The idiot, doesn't he know that chefs and wait staff prefer Coke? I had to fire someone while we were doing their new hire paperwork. The store manager interviewed him, then sent him to me, the ops manager, to do their paperwork. This kid starts majorly trash talking the store manager, other employees, asking if
any fine bitches work at the door?
He then goes on to say,
"Man, are you seriously having me fill out all this paperwork? You're about as retarded as the store manager."
I said, "Well, let's hold off on the paperwork then. I think we are going to go in a different direction with you, as you obviously are too professional for our business." It took him a second, but he then started acting like Eminem, and talked the whole way out. See ya.
Are you sure you didn't hire Jean-Ralphio from Parks and Rec?
I hate Jean-Ralphio so much, but love him at the same time. See, with Jean-Ralphio, he is at least aware, or semi-aware of himself. The dude I hired fired was totally, completely unaware.
Wasn't a manager, but we had a kid who came into the shop, and his first day of night shift they couldn't find him. Well, they found him after a few hours. He cleaned off a shelf in the parts room and was sleeping on it.
I had a buddy who did exactly this, while he was part-time worker doing inventory checking in a big cash and carry. In the beginning of his job he guesstimated amount of items, climbed highest rack, they went really high, maybe 10 meters, smoked a joint, ate a shitload of potato chips that were on the top shelf and went to sleep. The only difference, he never got caught. They paid a mofo for getting high, stealing chips and sleeping. He showed a relatively flat-chested girl in the office the results of his wife's breast augmentation on his phone, and gave her the contact details of the plastic surgeon.
I worked at a drugstore. They hired some girl, and on her first day behind the counter alone, she spent 20 minutes scratching unpurchased lotto tickets and throwing away any losers, until the manager saw what she was doing on the security camera and booted her.
IT position, supposedly had a BA in computer science with 2 years experience in relevant technical position. I didn't interview him. We very quickly discovered that his computer abilities were non-existent, started asking questions until he broke down and said he lied on his resume, because he wanted to make more money. His previous job was drywall installation. We gave him a list of software he needed, available via URL. He didn't know what to do with a URL, or what a URL was, and then it quickly unraveled. It was about 3 hours, because the first 2 were paperwork.
God damn it. I don't have a BA in computer science, but I could have bullshitted for at least a month before you caught on that I didn't know what I was doing.
Don't sell yourself short. With a little hard work, you could bullshit them for 20 years.
Hired on an IT guy, with apparently 6 years experience. Turned out he'd been the receptionist, who helped people with Excel problems. He didn't know what to do, so just did nothing all day. One frank discussion later and he's gone. Expected to be completely trained on the job. Tried to take the company to tribunal. Our union guy, who is as we want him to be, very pro-employee rather than pro-company, laughed at him.
Mastered Microsoft Excel. On the resume of everyone who has opened Excel before. I didn't fire this guy personally, but I did one better, I arrested him. I'm a police officer in the UK, I was forced to help on a recruitment event in our headquarters where applicants turned up, listened to a talk and did a few exams. Almost all wore suits or shirts and ties, except one. One was wearing a black polo shirt, black combat trousers and tactical boots. Weird and a bad impression, but whatever. Whilst they do the exam, I went into the yard for a smoke. All the applicants had to park in a certain area, which was just by the smoking shelter. One car stood out. It looked just like our unmarked cars, exactly like our unmarkeds. I was a little confused, so I had a closer look at it. It had radiator lights and on the back seat was a police issue stab vest. I thought that it must be one of our cars parked in the wrong place. It happens, after the exam they left, I watched them leave, and lo and behold, polo shirt man gets in the unmarked car. Immediately I jump in a real unmarked and take off after him. I found him 2 streets away putting blue lights on and driving through a red light. I overtook him, put my lights on and blocked him. He gets out waving a fake warrant card telling me he was en route to an emergency. Arrested for impersonating a police officer. He was also suspected of doing the same in about 3 other forces.
Did a Tarzan swing on an overhead hoist remote cable going some 20 feet before the cable tore out. It only took maintenance 20 minutes to fix, but he was gone by then.
Worth it.
This isn't like the others. He was either gonna be fired, or made a managing director. He just got unlucky.
He tried to buy weed off a customer, just because the customer looked like someone who might have weed. He didn't.
That isn't your regular stupid, that's some next level shit. Gets new job.
I finally have some extra money to buy weed. Where is the closest source to buy weed? That dude looks like he'd have weed.
When I was working at a shitty pizza takeaway place on a shitty caravan park, some dude who was staying there came up to us and asked if we had any weed. As it so happened, our shifts were about to finish and one of the girls I worked with was a dealer, who I was about to buy a bunch of weed off. If he didn't give us a 5-star rating for that, I don't know what we could have done.
If I didn't know where to buy weed, the workers in a trailer park pizza place would be some of the first people I'd ask. Edit, yes, everybody, I know that trailer park pizzeria weed is likely dirt. I wouldn't actually be looking to buy any, this was only a joke.
When I worked landscaping, we had a guy whose mother called in for him on his second day. She said he was still sore from the first day and was taking a bath, but would be in later. We got a good laugh and told his mother to send him to the office to pick up his check, and not bother coming to the job site.
Not first day but first week, so let me preface this by saying I used to be an assistant GM of an IHOP. And I hired an overnight server, pretty standard overnight type, they are always oddballs, but this guy took the cake. I would make a habit of checking up on my overnight employees, because obviously it's easy to sit around and do nothing when work could be getting done. Standard annoying manager I know, so I'm watching camera footage of his shifts after a week, and I keep seeing him sit down in the one booth. This booth had minimal camera coverage and I could only see a little of him sitting there. I thought he was sleeping but didn't have enough evidence to prove it, so I moved the camera over a little to capture the whole booth. His next shift, sure enough he goes and sits in that booth, and then something awful happens. On camera I have this grown man, like 35 years old, start to jerk off on the clock, in the dining room. I was 19 at the time, and that was the most awkward termination I ever had to deal with. I just rolled the camera footage in front of him and handed him a termination paper, and said, "Please sign this, we will mail your last check, don't come back." He tried to file for unemployment due to wrongful termination. I had to send video of a man clearly jerking off to my district manager, who I imagine sent it to corporate so they could deal with it.
I hired someone to write about cars for a website I was editing, saw some of their work, they seemed eager and well educated, I thought it would be a good fit. The very first piece of copy he turned in on his very first day, was a plagiarized copy of something I had written 2 years prior. I just sent him a link to my original piece that he plagiarized, and never heard from him again.
I worked at a popular teen/college kid clothing store, American Eagle. I wasn't the manager, but I trained new hires. This one girl shopped at the store a lot and we were excited to hire her. She was let go because she was late, was caught trying on clothes instead of greeting, and apparently laughed when anyone asked for a size larger than a medium. Her family showed up at the end of her shift and tried to buy $2,000 to $3,000 worth of clothes with her employee discount. Corporate policy sucks, so they got a good portion of it. Her mom tried to bring it all back years later, completely worn/destroyed, and threw a fit saying she should get full price because the girl had died. Guess who we could all see sitting in her mom's car?
What sort of a sick bastard drives around with her dead daughter? Did she drive to the hospital to return her too?
I hope so. Our theory was that she was a ghost. She was texting way too fast to be a zombie.
OMG, so dead, lol. Scaring mom for a month lol, she thinks she's going insane. Yesterday she went to one of those ghost whisperers, he told her to get rid of my clothes. No.
New firefighter in my city, had just finished 5 months academy, graduated the night before, his whole family is there, the mayor, half the city council, and the fire chief pins his badge and then he is assigned to a station. The rookie is told to report to the police department the next morning for tactical driver training, obstacle course and skid pad. Dude shows up the next morning at the police department, an hour late, still drunk from all the celebrating from the night before, not only fired, but arrested for DUI. That's the end of his firefighting career. Fired a 23-year-old intern on day 1 at our ad agency, showed up to work in a hoodie and shorts, looking like he'd not even slept. During his IT orientation, he put his head down on the table and fell asleep. We asked him to go home and never come back. Turns out his dad was friends with a board member, and already being from a well-off background, gave zero shit about a $10 per hour intern job in the first place.
Had to fire a high school kid because he wouldn't stop hitting on the female cashiers. I received multiple complaints on his first day. The best part was when his dad called, demanding an explanation.
Junior can't stop scoping dat ass. Training my lifeguards for the summer, when one girl couldn't swim. The test can be strenuous, if you haven't done any physical activity for a while, but this girl couldn't make it halfway across the pool without needing to be saved herself. Parents tried to sue for wrongful termination, until we had then come watch her daughter start drowning a minute into the test. People.
What is wrong with the parents that do this? Can't they get it that their kid is human and not the perfect little angel they imagine? Great. It's my first day of work, and I arrived an hour early, so I'm just sitting in the parking lot reading this thread.
Make sure you let us know how bad you up. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out my other videos. Also, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and ring the notification bell.